Hello, I'm David D. Cosmo. Welcome to ECTV Live. My co-host Rusty Fender has the week off. Our guest this week is Tony Harding, and while we normally talk about events that are coming up, and we will mention one on this program, our program today is not so much event-driven as it is purpose-driven. And when I tell you Tony's organization, in a sense is self-explanatory. Tony established a group called Organ Donation Awareness Tour Incorporated. It's such a serious subject, organ donations, Tony. And what got you involved? Was it a personal situation?
It was personal. When I was in high school, I was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. And at that point, it was stay away from contact sports and kind of protect the kidney. But when I was in my late 20s, I started getting sicker, and in my mid-30s, it came to a point where I needed a transplant. My sister and brother were both tested, and they were both matches for me. So we went with my sister, and my sister became my organ donor when I was 37. And that kidney lasted 12 years, and I had a good run. And in 2014, I went into kidney failure. And I started dialysis. And I started peritoneal dialysis, where you do this overnight. Because I'm young, I'm active. It was the type of dialysis that would keep my active lifestyle going.
That's something you can do at home.
At home,
I understand,
yes,
right?
At home and overnight, yes. And it really didn't work well for me, because when I was fitted with the tube for the peritoneal dialysis, I had a hernia. And the surgeon said to me he was going to fix the hernia. And then I'd be on my way to start my peritoneal dialysis, but it turned out I had 14 different hernias.
Oh my word!
So he had to repair all of that stuff in my abdomen, and my abdomen really wasn't equipped to handle peritoneal dialysis. But I knew it was only temporary, because my brother was a match back when I had my first kidney. So we were going through the process of having my brother tested and retested to have this the second transplant, and it turns out he was no longer a match.
Oh.
My body makeup had changed because I had another kidney in me. So the markers that they checked had changed in my body.
I didn't realize that could happen.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
That hit me like a ton of bricks. That was probably the worst day out of my experiences with organ donation.
Because all of a sudden you needed a donor, and it wasn't a family member you could turn to immediately.
Exactly. And I was told that I had a 5% chance of finding a match. So I was resigned to the fact that I was going to be on dialysis for the rest of my life, and I was only 49 at the time. So I stopped doing peritoneal dialysis, and I started to do hemodialysis. And I have a fistula in my arm, and they put 2 needles in the arm, one to draw the blood, one to return it, and it goes through a machine, and it filters the blood, and it removes the waste, because I was no longer urinating. So they would take off like 10 pounds of fluid from me every treatment, and I'd go in 3 days a week, 4 hours a day. And this was my life, and I was accepting it. I walked into that dialysis for the first time, and there were 12 dialysis chairs, and there was 11 people in that unit, and they had their heads down. And I thought to myself, I can die in this chair, or I can just own this place, and I could make this part-time job that we all had to go to somewhat bearable. And I've always loved music, and I've always applied music to my life and how it would apply to my life. And I thought of a Bob Seger lyric, and it says, I stood alone on a mountaintop staring out at the great divide. I can go east or I can go west, but it was all up to me to decide. And then I saw young hawks soaring, and my soul began to rise. And that was the moment that I changed my life. And then I knew I was just going to take over that unit, and I was going to make that fun. If you can ever make a dialysis unit fun, I was going to do whatever I could. And within a couple months, I was really feeling good. And I was going early, and I was staying late, and I was talking to the patients. I was like a part of the team. And the nurses there were phenomenal. And I love them, because you're with them 12 to 15 hours a week.
Sure.
They're like your family. Yeah. They really are. And I thought to myself, I have to do something for myself to prove that this dialysis chair is not going to own me. So what I decided to do was I planned a trip. Because I went to DaVita Dialysis, and they said, you can go anywhere. Just let us know, and we'll set up the appointments that you need to do your dialysis.
Oh, so you could actually travel.
Absolutely.
With prearranged appointments in various locations.
Exactly, David. So what I did was I dropped my daughter off at school on a Wednesday morning at Isaac Tripp, and I drove to Canton, Ohio, and I saw the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I never saw it before. I always wanted to see it. It was one of the things that I always wanted to do. And that I bopped around Football's Elite for a couple hours, and then I went to Akron and I had a dialysis treatment for 4 hours. I spent the night in Akron. I got in my car and I drove to Michigan. And I saw Bob Seger close out his tour in his hometown. It was it was the greatest concert I ever saw. And that song that I just quoted, he opened with that. And I was a 50-year-old guy standing in the stands and I'm crying because it meant so much to me because of what I just
took
did.
a little planning.
It did. It did. And then I spent the night in Detroit, and I got up the next morning and I drove to Cleveland. And I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I bopped around there for a while. And then the House from A Christmas Story is also in Cleveland.
Yeah, I was there.
Oh, I was, and it was so much fun because you know everything there.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
And I was the only one at the tour at the time. So this woman and I were just sitting there talking about the movie and sitting on the couch where the father was, you know, at Christmas time.
Yeah.
You know, and it was,
I hid under the sink.
No, I couldn't get there. I couldn't get there. But she asked, you know, and the leg was there, and the museum
The leg
across
lamp,
the street.
yeah, the leg lamp, yeah.
And so my dad grew up in Pittsburgh, so after I left Cleveland, I drove to Pittsburgh that evening, and I saw the house that my dad grew up in.
Wow.
And I was 10 years old the last time I saw it, but I remembered the address.
Good for you.
And I took some pictures. I knocked on the door, but nobody was home. But it was the same place I remembered. And I spent, that was Friday night, I spent the night in Pittsburgh. And that next morning at 6 a.m., I had another dialysis treatment in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
And I went to a hockey game in Pittsburgh, and I got in my car and I drove home. I did over 1,400 miles in 4 days.
Wow.
Because I was able to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that was the whole point. I can do whatever I want to do. You know, I'm not letting this
Yeah.
dialysis treatment stop me. So I went back to the unit, and my fistula is way up here on my left arm, so I had to wear a short sleeve shirt. And I went back to the dialysis unit the next Monday, and I had this Iron Man T-shirt on, just because I needed, you know, I needed the access, and I just had a fun T-shirt on. And then my nurse said to me, "Did you just do that? Did you just make that trip?" And I said, "Yeah, I made that trip. You know, I did it for these people, everybody else. I want to show everybody that they can be done.
Yes.
And they're like, "You are Iron Man." I'm like, "Yeah, I am Iron Man. You know, I can do whatever I want to do." And a month later, I was sitting in the dialysis chair on a Friday morning, and one of the nurses walked by and said, "Hey, the Kentucky Derby's tomorrow." I said, "I'm going," and I'm taking bets sitting in the dialysis chair. I said, "Everybody, I'm going to the Derby tomorrow. You know, get on your phones, see who you want to bet on, and place your bets." And sure enough, it was a 10.5-hour drive, and I couldn't do it all in one day because I just had dialysis. But I drove to Cleveland. I saw an Indians game, and I spent the night. I drove to the Derby the next day. I bet on the winner, which was a lot of fun. You know, it was the favorite, you know, it was the favorite, but still I bet on the winner, and you know, you're sitting there and you're rooting for your horse.
Yeah.
And I got in the car, and that night I drove to Wheeling, West Virginia, spent the night, and then drove home the next day. So under 50 hours I drove 1,500 miles because I was able to. You know, that was the whole thing. And I said, well, you know, this is my life, you know, and I'm not going to let it pass me by.
Right.
And then about 2 in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon, I got a call. I said, "Mr. Harding, this is Geisinger Transplant. You were number 8 on the list, now you're number 5. Pack a bag." And that was basically the conversation. And I'm like, all right, you know, I'm on the list. You know, I know I'm on the list to get a transplant, but I didn't think I was, you know, be climbing it like that. And I got to number 4 on the list that evening, but it wasn't going to happen. But at least, you know, there was something that I could put under my belt and say, this is how it's going to happen. So a few weeks later, I got a call and said, "Mr. Harding, you're number 4. Get ready." And I said, "Okay." And within about 6 or 7 hours, I was in line for the second kidney. But the second kidney might be bad, they told me. And it was. But I didn't get it. So on July 1st of 2015 at 2:08 in the morning, I got a call on my cell phone. And it was on vibrate. And I didn't hear it. And the transplant said, "You know, we have a kidney offer for you," which means, you know, this kidney's mine. If all the tests following this are going to work out, but if it does, this is your kidney. And he was persistent, and he called me back, and I answered the phone, and sure enough, you know, it was a match. And they said they had some more testing to do, and I was sitting in my dialysis unit at the time when I got the final call. "Mr. Harding, this kidney's good to go. Come on down." and I was down in Geisinger by 3 o'clock, and I met my surgeon for the first time, and he laid out a plan of what's going to happen in the next 12 hours. They were going to start the recovery of the organs in 15 minutes. It was going to take until 6 o'clock in the afternoon for that procedure to be over with. By 9 o'clock, it was going to be transported to Danville at Geisinger. And then my surgeon was going to take a look at it, and if he felt it was good, I'd be in surgery by 10 and out by 2. And Dr. Kotru came to me every milestone he mentioned. He came into my room and he told me they started the procedure.
This is where we are.
The kidney's out, and it looks good, and it's on its way. The kidney's here, and I'm going to take a look at it. The kidney looks good. We're going in for surgery by 10, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was out. Within 24 hours, I got the phone call, and I was in recovery. And it was an amazing ride. It really was. And I realized that while I was celebrating, someone had died.
And that's of course, I would think, I guess, one of the down spots when you talk about an organ donation. My wife just recently went through open heart surgery, and while I was at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, I met a family from out of state to the south who had come up there because their 21-year-old daughter needed a heart transplant.
Yes.
And while I was there, they got it. So the jubilation in their life, seeing that there was a match for their daughter, was fantastic, but even they realized that for that to happen, another life had to be lost. Now, the other aspect of that, of course, is that there are certain organs, and kidneys would be one, where you don't have to lose a life necessarily.
Right, because my sister was a living donor.
Right, exactly. So there's certain organs to which, death is not the other side of the spectrum. But in many cases, I guess, most organ donations probably come because result certainly of accidents.
Yeah. The opioid problem that we're having now.
Tremendous epidemic right now.
It's terrible, but a lot of those people become organ donors. And the families, that's their salvation. Well, my son or daughter died, but they're able to help someone that really needs the help, and that's something that they can hold on to.
There was just a network piece within the past week or so with a woman who lost her son, and I don't remember the circumstances. I believe it was an auto accident, and her son's heart was transplanted into an individual who was doing well, and in this case, they were able to find out.
Yes.
Because you can't always do that.
Right.
But she was able to find out, so she was actually able to listen through a stethoscope to her son's beating heart, although it was in someone else's body, but that other body was saved, that life was saved.
There are stories that I'm more aware of now, like I'm on Facebook, and when I see things like a woman was walked down the aisle by the gentleman who had her father's heart. I mean, these are real stories. And there was a woman who was 7 months pregnant and found out her brain was never developed. And the baby was only going to live for a few hours. So, the normal course would be to abort the pregnancy. But she said, I want to carry this baby to term and donate the organs to someone who needs them. I mean, can you imagine the resolve of that woman?
Yeah.
To knowing that, she's going through this and she's not going to have a baby.
Yes.
But still, she had, the selflessness to say, I want to help other people. And
sure.
It's, there are stories out there that are heartbreaking.
And you don't normally hear them because this isn't a subject that normally comes up, which is why we wanted to have Tony on the show today. Pardon me. Now there is an event coming up. It's in August. Let's talk about that very quickly because we got plenty of time to get ready for that, but it's important.
Yes, I'm sponsoring a day with the Rail Riders. It's called the Organ Donation Awareness Day. It's August 6th. It's a Sunday afternoon. It's against the Pawtucket Red Sox. So it's supposed to be a good game.
So it's Yankees versus Red Sox.
It's Yankees versus Red Sox. So they have, and it's Baby Bombers Day. Every Sunday is Baby Bombers Day.
Okay.
So. I have a Facebook page. It's called the Organ Donation Awareness Tour, and if you could find me on Facebook or by me, Tony Harding, you'll find some information on the game. I'm selling tickets to raise awareness for organ donation. And there's a Northeast Coalition that I belong to from the Gift of Life organization, which is in our area. And they'll be there and they'll be handing out the green wristbands. And we'll be talking to people about organ donation at the time. And we'll sign up people. We'll have a computer set up that we can sign up people within 30 seconds, to become organ donors if they're not and they choose to. I have a friend of mine that I used to take dialysis with, and she was 22 when I took dialysis with her. And we called her the kid. And now the kid got a kidney a few months after I got mine.
Huh?
And it was from a living donor, it was from a friend of hers who decided, I want to be checked, and if I'm a match, I'm going to give this kidney to my friend. Now the donor is going to throw out the first pitch, and the recipient's going to catch it.
Oh, great, great.
A little symbolism there. But we're going to be interviewed behind home plate and be on the Jumbotron, and I'll give some statistics that we'll go over later. And, it's going to be a fun event. It's a Sunday afternoon. It's going to be a beautiful day in August, and I hope we can fill the stands and put these green bands on everybody.
Sure,
That's really what we want to do.
Now, unlike this program, unlike that special Rail Riders game, the one place where you should hear about organ donation is when you are getting your driver's license, because normally they are to ask you, are you to be a donor or not, because there's a box on your license that is checked if you are an organ donor. Now I am, and I got to tell you, probably the silliest reason in the world, unlike some personal thing like this, is I grew up during we talk about the Yankees and the Red Sox. I grew up during the heyday of the Yankees.
Okay.
And my hero was Mickey Mantle. And
Mick got a liver.
Some people know the latter part of his life, Mickey had destroyed his liver because he was a drinker, and he openly admitted that toward the end of his life. Mm-hmm. But he asked everybody to be organ donors, and that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I checked off the box, and it's on my license, because if you're, God forbid, involved in an accident, they've got to know, and as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And I'm kind of curious, and I don't know if you would know, there's a lot of people that drive in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Do we have any idea how many licenses there are as opposed to how many people have checked donor on licenses?
The number of licenses, I'm not sure, but there are 46% of Pennsylvanians are registered organ donors.
Okay.
However, 95% of the people in Pennsylvania are in favor of organ donation.
But only 46%.
But only 46% are registered organ donors. That's the gap that we're trying to close.
Yeah.
There are so many myths out there, David, of why people won't be organ donors.
What are the reasons? Why do you hear that?
If the doctor knows I'm an organ donor, he's not going to save my life, is completely not true. The doctors aren't rooting through your wallet to find your license to see if you're an organ donor, to see if we could save your life. Their job is to save your life at all cost.
Yes.
And
that's their oath.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a very big myth. And a good friend of mine believed that. And I didn't know he wasn't an organ donor until he texted me one day and he said, I want to let you know that I renewed my license and I'm an organ donor now because of you. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to raise awareness. Now, I didn't know that he wasn't, but when I talked to a mutual friend, he said, no, that was really a big deal for him to change.
Oh.
And, it's crazy. Well, some people will say, it's against my religion to be an organ donor. Every major religion in the United States are in favor of organ donation. It's actually considered your final gift to humanity. And Pope Francis came out and said basically that it is a testament to love thy neighbor to become an organ donor. So there are a lot of myths about being an organ
religious
donor.
aspects,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very respectful procedure. To become an organ donor, you can have an open casket. It's not the case that they mutilate the body, and you can have an open casket. It's done very, very sensitive to the body. You can save up to 8 lives becoming an organ donor.
Oh, that's another thing that's important that we don't think of, because we tend to think of something like the heart, which again can be transplanted under a lot of conditions, actually.
Yes.
But we don't realize that that's not the only
Right.
the only thing.
The heart, liver can be, a liver can be given to a child, like the bottom of the liver can be severed, and that will regenerate in a child's body.
Ah,
And then the rest of the liver could go to an adult. So a liver could save 2 lives.
I didn't know that.
And there are 2 kidneys. You can have a single lung or double lung transplant. A heart, pancreas, and even intestines are transplanted to save lives.
Wow.
Now you can also, organ donors would donate their corneas, and you can help 2 people that can't see to see again. And there's bone and there's tissue. Like bones, like I heard a story that a woman couldn't move her neck. And like she had a problem with the bones in her neck. And a woman's husband had died, and he was an organ and tissue donor. And they made a piece of bone from his bone to fit this woman's neck, and now she can turn her head.
Oh, darn, wow.
I mean, the advances in medicine.
I was just going to ask about that, whether or not perhaps medical science has now evolved to the extent where there's a lot more that can be done, and with a pretty good success rate?
Yes, very good success rate, yes, yes. The things that they do, you know, they'll take skin from the back of your legs to help burn victims. Now, they won't transplant the skin, but they'll lay the skin over the burns, and the burns will help, you know, people heal. There was a woman from Australia, and she was in the area last year, and I met her down in Philadelphia at the Gift of Life, which is the organ procurement organization that found my kidney for me, okay? And she was on the Donate Life float at the Rose Bowl parade, but she was a super marathon runner in Australia. And she was caught in a brush fire during an event.
Ooh.
And she was burned over 65% of her body. And she lost 7 fingers. And she was burned from head to toe.
Wow.
And at the time that this happened, New Zealand was having the World Cup. And there were terroristic threats in New Zealand. So they took all the skin that they had in Australia and sent it to New Zealand, because if they needed it because of burn victims,
right,
from a terrorist attack, then that would be there to help them. But there were legal issues that said that they couldn't get that skin back. So the musculoskeletal organization in Jessup, which is one of the largest in the world, actually sent skin to Australia to help this
right
woman.
here in our backyard.
Right, yeah, and it's the largest in the country. It's one of the most respected musculoskeletal recovery organizations in the country. And it's right in our backyard.
Wow.
And you know, these things that like I hear organs, but now I'm more aware. I was in a fender bender 2 months ago, and I was in the hospital late at night with a friend of mine, and I heard potential cornea and tissue. And now, like, I would normally not hear that, but now I know someone
You're attuned
passed,
to it, yeah.
And they probably died of cardiac arrest. Because if they were brain dead, then the organs would be donated. You can only donate your organs if you're brain dead, because blood is still flowing through your organs.
Right.
Once the blood stops flowing through your organs,
they will die.
Then they will die,
sure.
and they won't be fit for. So you know, these are the little things that I'm hearing, you know, off the cuff, you know,
Yeah.
and it's amazing the things that I'm aware of now.
Yeah, and what are you doing? What is the organ donor organization doing to encourage people and I guess mainly to destroy those myths
Yes,
that you talked about?
That's really a big part of it. Now, we have tabling events. Lackawanna County had a health fair on First Friday last year. We had a table there, and we were you know, anyone who had questions, they would come by and we'd answer questions and try to get people to sign up. But we're all over the place just trying to create awareness. Now, last year, when I started to get involved with organ donation, after a while, when I started feeling better after my transplant, I started doing things, and I acquired this 4-foot by 4-foot Donate Life sign, and I'd take it wherever I went. And I went to a Pirates game, and I was in right center field, and I was in the front row. And there was a ball hitting the gap, and Odrubal Herrera from the Phillies is running towards the ball, and he's running towards me, and I'm like, "Are you an organ donor? Are you an organ donor?" You know, it's just like crazy things. But you know, so the fans that were around, like, he had no idea what I was saying, but the fans around me were, you know, I was talking to them, and I was just giving them my story. You know, oh, I'm an organ donor. Well, maybe I should be an organ donor. You know,
Sure.
It's just getting the word out however we can. I took that sign to the Steeler training camp. And they have this big hill at St. Vincent's that overlooked the practice field. So I had it perched on the hill that the players could see it. And a gentleman walked up to me and he said, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. I got a heart transplant 3 years ago at Ohio State University. These are the little things that...
And we don't know, as we're passing people in the halls here and there, out in the street here and there, who may have benefited from this.
Right.
Because, again, it's not something that just normally comes up. You've
Right.
you got to look for your chance. And I give you credit. You reached out to me on Facebook.
Yes, yeah, I did.
And
I did.
I just thought this is something that is not talked about enough, and that everybody really ought to be considering. Well, our time is drawing toward the end. The big event then coming up is August, so
Right.
perhaps you want to relate that one more time. The big game.
The game is the Rail Riders and the Red Sox on August 6th at 1 o'clock. It's the Organ Donation Awareness Day. You can get in touch with me at 570-575-8287 or find me on Facebook. My name is Tony Harding, or look for the Organ Donation Awareness Tour. And if I can have a minute, there's some statistics. Imagine, David, you walk into a doctor's office and the doctor says, you have a terminal illness and there's nothing I can do for you. Maybe someone can help you. Go sit in the waiting room. And you open the waiting room door and it's the size of Beaver Stadium and it's full. There are 118,000 people on the transplant waiting list.
Wow.
And that's why the need for people to become organ donors is so great. There's only two ways out of Beaver Stadium. Either you get a life-saving transplant like I did, or you die.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get better. You know, you wait and you pray.
Yeah.
20 people die every day on that list. Every 18 hours in Pennsylvania, someone dies waiting for a life-saving transplant.
Well, there it is. We talk about that. We often refer to blood donation as the gift of life. I think this is perhaps takes it to a higher level. And Tony, thank you for making our audience more aware of the need, and again dispelling some of the myths involving it. Tony Harding, and I thank you for joining us. Mark McGlory, thank you so much for all the electronic work you do to keep us on the air. I'm David DeCosmo for ECTV Live. Until we see you again next week, here's hoping all your news is good.